maybe we can get a little bit more specific. Some of these things we're getting ready to discuss now, it may help target a minority group.
Yes, absolutely.
Minority groups in particular.
Yes.
But it can be applicable, the information can be applicable to anyone.
Absolutely.
You know.
But fair to say that there are some issues that affect minorities disproportionately. And we certainly see it in business ownership. And so I want to do this in the reverse order. I want to talk about minorities and their businesses first before we talk about them individually. Because in the business structure, we see a lot of struggles for minority businesses. And I'll just start out with one that I know for a fact is an issue. Statistically, most minority business owners, their businesses only employ the owners. And so what that means is that a lot of the structure that they like to see, that you've employed people in the community, that you've maintained payroll and things like that, the business, for the most part, employed the owner and did not employ other people. Now, that's a standard. Like, I think the percentage is like 95%. It's a very high percentage of businesses owned by minorities that only employ the owner.
Many of the things that we do aren't minority-based.
No, we work with everybody.
We work with standards with any institution, any personnel of any color, and it meets government and credit, banking, regulation standards. Right. That's it.
Absolutely.
You know.
But then that's why the challenges stand out to me so clear. Because if I'm talking to, and I talk to everybody, but if I'm talking to a minority, I'm already understanding what additional challenges they may be facing in that conversation to get them prepared for the funding. And so it stands out to me that, wow, they didn't know that they needed this. Well, they got to brush up on their technology. Well, the business doesn't have this documentation done already. You have to get that done before you can go in for this funding. I find myself having more of that conversation a lot of times with some of the minorities that we work with. And again, it's a lot of times to no fault of their own. They just don't have the education and mentoring to have all this stuff right. And Vince and I find ourselves in a position that we actually have to be that mentor to them to say, hey, you got to get this in order if you really want this.
You know something, it just sparked the whole thought process when you said that, Lisa, is that, you know, people need the mentorship, understand the requirements. I'm just going to get a little bit to the skinny. That's what I'm going to call it. The skinny into people getting approved. Many of the bankers, when we talk about business credit, they require you to have 5 or 6 active accounts yourself.
Yes.
Meaning that you should have 2 or 3 credit cards. You should potentially have an auto loan, potentially a home loan. And what that does is it shows the business bankers that you know how to manage credit.
Individually,
you know,
to support the business, correct?
Exactly. That's where it starts. They want to understand, can you manage credit? Now, for the young citizens out today, I want to say our millennials. They have one account, 800 credit, and for some reason, they feel as though they should be able to manage $500,000.
Entitlement, but we'll talk about that in another episode. That's a whole different podcast.
I can manage $1 million with one account, you know.
But let me kind of reel that back in, just to simply say that the individual person, if you can't show, for most business bankers, that you've at least managed a $5,000 credit limit credit card. And mind you, it can't be you've charged up $5,000 out of $5,000 either. But if you cannot show that someone has trusted you to that extent, a lot of times you won't get approved for the business credit. Am I correct?
Yeah, well, again,
or that's at least, makes it more borderline for the decision making.
Yeah, again, I can't say no to that. I would say yes.
Okay.
If you're trying to get anything substantial. Yeah, you're going to need at least some substantial on your own, personal credit. But again, it's the level of experience. They want to see levels of experience, meaning that that one account is just not going to be enough.
Right. You're not brand new. You're not new.
Exactly. They're going to want to see, at least in most cases in the bank requirements, at least 6 active accounts that's actively going on.